Hi, my name is Jessica Mathis from the Multimedia class, and I just wanted to share a little bit more information and my personal experience with multimedia and the adult learner. As I said in the screencast part 1, multimedia and the adult learner, I said that teachers have to be extremely cognizant of how their students learn and how their disabilities affect their learning. Much of the studies that have been done on the issue of multimedia and disabilities have been done in the area of literacy and people with learning disabilities, simply because learning disabilities and reading has the most to do with cognition and word recognition. Um, as far as other disabilities such as hearing impairments, sensory motors, people with cerebral palsy, the studies have not been done yet. There are very few studies out there that talk about or discuss how multimedia can be used to help them. If teachers have someone with a LD learning disability, just as in primary education, they can use the multimedia to help them sound out words, to help them recognize words, put together sentences, help them with their grammatics. It may be processing information, um, such as picking out main ideas from text. Teachers can facilitate around computer-based programs that help students with LDs to uh, pick out the main idea or pick out the main point of a paragraph. Students with LDs and teachers can also use their um, multimedia to uh, help the students do research on pertinent points that they forget, um, and other things, among many. Another article that I was reading uh, called Mathematics and the High Rates of Incidences with Mathematic Learning Disabilities. That article suggests that teachers can use multimedia to help adult learners and learners with disabilities to write down the math, to help them more accurately solve their equation without any problems, help them write their graphics. They like to use sound, animation in their presentation of the topic. It makes it more interesting. As far as my own personal experience with the multimedia and my disability is cerebral palsy, and I have more or less um, fine motor issues with my hands and fingers and things like that. So it's hard for me to mash things, or it might be hard for me to write things down quickly, because what I hear and what I see is kind of hard for me to process these things. So how I use multimedia, I use my iPad to do research on, I use the notepad on my iPad to write my math notes and clarify my math notes so that I can learn better. I think that this is a very important issue as far as it relates to adult education, because of the simple fact that many people and individuals with disabilities don't get to go to school. You don't see a whole lot of you see a very low rate of kids with disabilities and adults with disabilities that actually graduate with the skills to get a job or obtain a house or do everyday basic things. So if you have it on a level where uh, people can get access to literacy education through multimedia, such as learning how to read documents, learning how to read applications, learning how to read um, medicine bottles, housing applications. There are many people that don't even know how to do that. Adult basic education is basically saying, or a whole premise of adult education is to give adults the basic skills that they need. And on the adult level, it is much more easier to come forth and say, well, you have accommodations, you need services in order to get the things that you need, uh, set a realistic view as far as what your goals are, what they should be, and what they expect. Unlike primary education, it's not a prescribed notion of how you're going to teach. Um, when you're dealing with adult education, like I said, you have to give the adult what they want as opposed to what uh what you might want to give them. So that is why it's very important to sit down and talk with the student or talk with whoever is helping them, caregiver or whatever, to sit down and see what their goals are. Because as a teacher, that would help you to know what kinds of things you need to implement in your class. Implementation of multimedia could be as simple as learning how to use JAWS, or learning how to use um, teach an LD person how to read and write, or write a sentence, or write a letter. All of these things come into play when you deal with multimedia. The whole purpose of multimedia is to make things more easier, to make them simpler, and to make them more interactive. And so when you are a teacher and you are implementing multimedia into your classrooms, like I said before, you have to consider what disability your student has, consider how they interact with the online environment, and consider what is being taught. My own personal experience with it, I work as a volunteer at Living Independence for Everyone, and one of the things that we do is provide independent skills training. And since technology is becoming more and more prevalent in society, or more and more of a requirement, many of the clients, we have to get programs and multimedia, and we have to be aware of how we place these things on our websites so that they can get access to them and so that they can fill out the correct paperwork so that they can get the resources that they need in order to achieve their goal. And that is the whole purpose of adult whole connection between multimedia and people with disabilities is being able to create a barrier-free environment regardless of whether you're dealing with someone who is non-disabled or disabled. And I was going to show you guys how to make or create a document that is closed caption. But in my research, I found that you have to download a program called Stamps, which is subtitling add-ins for Microsoft PowerPoint and Word. And what that program basically does is any audio or text file, it helps you to or allows you to include captioning on any of your items. What you have to do is you have to go in and go to the help file of your Microsoft Word, and then you have to find out, how many bits that your computer can take, whether it's a 32-bit or a 40 or 64-bit program. And once you have downloaded it onto your hard drive, then what you can do is install it into the Word program, and they have different options on there that will allow you to make your documents more accessible to those who are hard of hearing. As far as multimedia and hearing loss, in adult education, making audio files more audible or providing closed captions is important. When you make your websites or when you implement audio files into your class, you have to provide closed captions that makes it easy for them to understand. Because if they're not able to understand, then they're not going to get the information that you need. For example, if a deaf student is sitting up in front of your classroom, but if they can't hear what is being said, then the teacher has to go and modify themselves by getting a tuner or some type of microphone that would be available to her and the deaf student. And the deaf student and the teacher would sit down and use this microphone almost like a regular microphone that you would pin on yourself. But instead of everyone being able to hear her, by her using that amplifier for the deaf student, it would help the deaf student to hear exactly what she is saying. So in saying all of that, closed caption is very important because it helps deaf students hear and gain the exactness of what you are saying. And when you are in a learning environment, learning exactly what to say and how to say it in order to help them gain key and clear information is important, because those informations may be the thing that help them pass tests, or maybe the thing that may help them to facilitate a life skill or any sort of thing like that. So I would just like to say too, that I will have a blog post at the end of this posting on YouTube. If you guys could please go and answer it. And if you have any more questions or would like to know more about stamps, then I will be posting information up shortly.